Imagine discovering a secret so powerful, so earth-shattering, that it could change the very foundation of religious belief as we know it. This is no ordinary historical find. This is the burial box of Caiaphas, the high priest who sentenced Jesus Christ to death, a figure whose name has echoed through history as both a villain and a man of profound influence. But what if there was more to Caiaphas than we ever imagined? What if he left behind a hidden testament that reveals terrifying secrets about Jesus Christ, secrets that could shatter our understanding of history and faith? Recently, a testament attributed to Caiaphas has surfaced, and its revelations are nothing short of shocking. What did Caiaphas truly think about Jesus? What actions did he take? And what terrifying visions did he experience after condemning Jesus to the cross? This is not just a story of religious history. It's a story that could shake the very core of what millions believe. Join us as we delve into the heart of this mystery, unraveling what Caiaphas disclosed in his final testament, a testament that has left scholars, theologians, and believers around the world in stunned silence. The discovery of Caiaphas' last testament is a story that reads like a biblical thriller. Deep beneath the ancient streets of Jerusalem, in a hidden chamber beneath a synagogue that dates back to the Second Temple period, archaeologists stumbled upon a manuscript. This was no ordinary manuscript. It was a parchment scroll written in Aramaic, the language of the people during that time. The moment scholars and archaeologists laid eyes on this document, they were skeptical. Could this truly be the last testament of the man who played such a pivotal role in the crucifixion of Jesus Christ? The manuscript underwent intense scrutiny, language analysis, carbon dating, you name it. The results were conclusive. The scroll dated back to the early 1st century AD, authenticating its origin and proving that this was indeed the final words of Caiaphas. What makes this discovery so monumental is not just its age or its historical significance, but the contents of the manuscript itself. Caiaphas' last testament is a window into his soul, revealing his thoughts, his doubts, and his haunting encounters with Jesus. Far from the one-dimensional villain often portrayed in the Gospels, Caiaphas emerges as a conflicted man, a high priest torn between his duty and his beliefs. Caiaphas describes Jesus not just as a rebellious preacher, but as a charismatic figure whose teachings resonated deeply, even among some members of the Sanhedrin, the Jewish council. Caiaphas recounts several meetings with Jesus where they debated religious law and theology. These encounters left him questioning the very foundations of his faith, and he reveals that Jesus' words made a profound impact on him. This is a Caiaphas we've never known, a man who struggled with doubt, fear, and the weight of his decisions. But the most chilling revelation comes in the form of a vision. After Jesus' death, Caiaphas claims to have had a vision of the resurrected Jesus. In this vision, Jesus foretold the destruction of the temple and the suffering that would soon engulf Jerusalem. This vision haunted Caiaphas, leaving him tormented by the belief that he had made a catastrophic mistake in condemning Jesus to death. This is not just a story of a man regretting his actions. This is a high priest who was terrified by the consequences of what he had done. The contents of this testament are bound to ignite fierce debates. For Christians, Caiaphas' vision adds another layer of evidence to the resurrection of Jesus Christ, a cornerstone of Christian faith. For Jews, this testament challenges long-held narratives about the high priesthood and its role in the Passion of Christ. It raises profound questions about the nature of religious authority, the struggle between maintaining tradition and embracing new revelations, and the human conflict that has shaped religious history for millennia. The significance of this testament goes beyond theological debates. It offers a rare glimpse into the mindset of Jewish leadership during a time of immense turmoil and change. Caiaphas reflects on Roman rule, Jewish unrest, and his interactions with key figures of the time, painting a picture of a world on the brink of chaos. He is no longer just a villain in a biblical story. He is a man caught between the pressures of his position and the terrifying realization that he may have condemned the Messiah. To fully grasp the gravity of Caiaphas' last testament, we must look at the historical context in which he lived. Judea, the kingdom that housed Jerusalem, was under the oppressive control of the Roman Empire. The Jews had a complex relationship with Rome while they were under Roman rule. They fiercely held on to their religious beliefs and traditions. But this was a time of great tension. The Roman administration was harsh, and the people of Judea felt the weight of oppression. They were taxed heavily, and poverty, disease, and injustice were rampant. This was not just a time of spiritual crisis, it was a time of societal upheaval. Amid this turmoil, Caiaphas found himself at the center of one of the most pivotal moments in history. He was a high priest in a time when religious authority was both a burden and a weapon. His decisions were not just about theology, they were about survival, both his own and that of his people. But Caiaphas' last testament reveals a man who, in the end, could not escape the spiritual consequences of his actions. His vision of a resurrected Jesus and the destruction of the temple weighed heavily on him, and he feared that his role in the crucifixion would bring about divine retribution. This testament forces us to re-examine Caiaphas' role in the Passion of Christ. It challenges us to see him not just as a figure of authority, but as a human being struggling with the weight of his decisions. It asks us to consider the possibility that Caiaphas, like so many others, was caught in the tides of history, tides that were beyond his control. The discovery of Caiaphas' last testament is not just a footnote in the annals of biblical archaeology, it is a revelation that could reshape our understanding of one of the most important events in human history. It offers us a glimpse into the soul of a man who, for centuries, has been vilified, and it challenges us to consider the complexity of the human experience, especially in times of great moral and spiritual conflict. So what do we do with this knowledge? How does this discovery change our understanding of Jesus, Caiaphas, and the events that led to the crucifixion? The answers are not simple, but they are profound. This testament is a reminder that history is never as black and white as we might like it to be. It is filled with shades of gray complexities that challenge our assumptions and force us to look deeper. As we continue to explore the implications of Caiaphas' last testament, we are invited to see history not just as a series of events, but as a collection of human experiences that are filled with doubt, fear, revelation, and ultimately, redemption. This is not just the story of Caiaphas, it is the story of all of us who struggle with the weight of our decisions and the consequences they bring. Caiaphas' last testament is a powerful reminder that even those who seem most certain in their actions can be haunted by doubt and fear. It challenges us to question our own assumptions, to look beyond the surface, and to seek the deeper truths that lie beneath. This is a discovery that will continue to resonate, not just in the world of archaeology, but in the hearts and minds of believers around the world. What secrets did Caiaphas take to his grave? What revelations did he share in his final testament? And how will this discovery change the way we understand one of the most pivotal moments in history? These are questions that will be debated for years to come, but one thing is certain: the discovery of Caiaphas' last testament is a revelation that cannot be ignored. As we delve deeper into this mystery, we are reminded that history is a living thing, constantly evolving, constantly revealing new truths. The story of Caiaphas is not over, it is just beginning. And as we continue to uncover the secrets of the past, we are invited to join in the journey, a journey that promises to change the way we see the world, our faith, and ourselves. There was a significant gap between the wealthy and the poor. The expectation of a Messiah was widely spread among the Jewish people. Jews believe Jesus is the Messiah. Jesus is reported to have performed miracles of healing the sick and feeding the hungry. By all Christian gospel accounts, Jesus was buried, then rose from the dead 3 days later to ascend into heaven as the Messiah of all mankind, which was a big deal of hope that kept the people going during those tough times. They were waiting for the Messiah, a special leader who would free them from the Romans' dominance and restore their kingdom. The Jewish society was divided into different groups, including Pharisees, Sadducees, Essenes, and Zealots, each with their interpretations of the law, that is, the Torah, and beliefs about the Messiah. The Pharisees, known for their strict adherence to the Torah and oral traditions, believed in the resurrection of the dead and the existence of angels. On the contrary to the Pharisees, the Sadducees were a more conservative group, majorly composed of the priestly and aristocratic classes. They rejected oral traditions and did not believe in the resurrection of the dead. Then the Essenes, a monastic group that lived in isolated communities such as Qumran, practiced strict purity laws. Now, the Zealots were a revolutionary group of people that sought to overthrow the Roman government through violent means. Herod was the king of Judea appointed by the Romans. And even though his rule was also marked by paranoia and brutality, including the execution of several of his family members, he was known for his extensive building projects, including the expansion of the Second Temple in Jerusalem, which was the center of Jewish religious life. The high priests, who were appointed by the Romans, held significant power in society, such as the likes of Caiaphas. Joseph Caiaphas, who was a Sadducee, served as the high priest of the temple in Jerusalem from AD 18 to AD 36. As the high priest, Caiaphas had significant religious duties, including overseeing temple activities and rituals, especially during important festivals like Passover. But his role was not just religious, it was deeply political. The high priest had to ensure that Jewish society remained stable and that no actions taken by the Jewish population would provoke the wrath of Rome. According to the biblical Gospels, around 27 to 29 CE, Jesus of Nazareth's ministry emerged. Did you know that Jesus grew up in the small town of Nazareth, which had a reputation of being poor? He preached a message of love, forgiveness, and the coming of the kingdom of God. His teachings attracted a large following, particularly among the poor and disenfranchised. Jesus also performed miracles, which further cemented his status as a prophet and possibly the Messiah in the eyes of his followers. His entry into Jerusalem, celebrated today as Palm Sunday, was a bold public declaration that he was a significant figure, perhaps even the awaited Savior. This event alone would have caught the attention of both the Jewish authorities and the Roman rulers. Caiaphas and the Jewish leaders were wary of Jesus for several reasons. First, his growing popularity threatened their authority. Jesus often criticized the religious leaders of the time, accusing them of hypocrisy and corruption. This was not just a spiritual critique, but a direct challenge to their power and legitimacy. Second, there was a political threat. Any large movement, especially one proclaiming the arrival of a new kingdom, was seen as a potential spark for rebellion. The last thing Caiaphas wanted was to give the Roman authorities a reason to crack down on the Jewish population. If Jesus' followers got out of hand, it could lead to severe repercussions from Rome. Was Caiaphas just a power-driven individual who was jealous of Jesus, or was he just trying to maintain order in the Jewish tradition? For these reasons, Caiaphas, who was a Sadducee and didn't believe in the resurrection of the dead, and the Sanhedrin, otherwise known as the Jewish Council, saw Jesus as a major threat, and they decisively concluded he had to be gotten rid of. These tensions ended in the arrest and trial of Jesus. According to the Gospels, Jesus was arrested in the Garden of Gethsemane after the Last Supper, a meal he shared with his disciples to celebrate Passover. He was brought before the Sanhedrin, where Caiaphas and other Jewish leaders questioned him. The charges against Jesus were primarily religious blasphemy for claiming to be the Son of God. However, underlying these charges was the fear of political instability. By claiming a divine kingship, Jesus was seen as a potential insurrectionist. The Sanhedrin found Jesus guilty and brought him before the Roman governor Pontius Pilate. Here, the charges shifted more to a political angle that he was claiming to be the king of the Jews, which was very much against Rome. Pontius Pilate, the Roman governor, found himself in a tricky position. He could see that Jesus did not pose a real political threat to Rome, but he was also aware of the precarious balance of power in Judea. Pilate initially tried to avoid condemning Jesus, offering to release him as part of a Passover amnesty tradition. However, the crowd, influenced by the Jewish leaders, demanded Jesus' crucifixion. Reluctantly, Pilate agreed to the execution to maintain peace and order. Jesus was flogged, mocked, and crucified. Naturally, the most famous character sacrificed on the cross was Jesus Christ. Strangely enough, his instrument of death ended up becoming the symbol of the religion founded by his followers. A common Roman method of execution reserved for the worst criminals and insurrectionists. The crucifixion of Jesus had profound and lasting impacts. For Christians, it became the central event of their faith, symbolizing Jesus' sacrifice for humanity's sins and his resurrection as proof of his divine nature. For Caiaphas and the Jewish authorities, it was a temporary solution to a perceived threat, though it certainly didn't end the Christian movement. The resurrection of Jesus, as proclaimed by his followers, led to the rapid spread of Christianity. Within a few decades, the message of Jesus had spread throughout the Roman Empire and beyond, fundamentally altering the course of history. As for Caiaphas, he remained a high priest for several more years. Historically, he is often portrayed as a villain, the man who condemned Jesus to death. However, understanding the complex historical context helps us see him as a figure trying to navigate incredibly difficult political and social pressures. Caiaphas was doing what he believed was necessary to maintain order and protect his people from Roman retribution. His actions, while harsh, were in line with the responsibilities of his position. He was a man caught between the demands of an occupying power and the fervent expectations of his people. However, not everyone sees it this way. In fact, the release of Caiaphas' testament has created a storm of reactions through both academic and religious communities. We'll be taking a look at a few of them over the next few minutes. The reaction to the testament reactions have been mixed, with some excited about the discovery while others are skeptical about its authenticity and implications. Many of them saw this testament as a goldmine, offering a rare glimpse into the mind of a key historical figure during one of the most important events in human history. For decades, Caiaphas had been somewhat of an enigma, a powerful high priest whose motives and thoughts were largely mysteries. This testament suddenly made him more relatable and more human. But not all reactions were positive. Some scholars were skeptical, questioning the authenticity of the document and the veracity of Caiaphas' terrifying visions. But whether you believe in supernatural elements or not, there's no denying that this discovery has sparked a fascinating dialogue about the intersection of history, faith, and human psychology. Leading biblical scholars are calling for a more thorough examination and analysis of the manuscript and its contents. Conferences are being set up to discuss the Testament and its potential impact on our understanding of early Christian and Jewish history. Meanwhile, religious leaders are grappling with the theological ramifications and figuring out how to address this in their teachings. Some theologians embraced the Testament as evidence of a higher plan. They argued that Caiaphas' visions were a form of divine retribution or a prophetic insight meant to underscore the importance of Jesus' sacrifice. This perspective suggested that even those who opposed Jesus played a role in a grand divine scheme. On the other hand, more skeptical theologians cautioned against taking the visions at face value. They pointed out that historical documents often contain elements of myth and exaggeration. These scholars suggested that Caiaphas' testament might be more about the high priest's guilt and fear than actual prophetic visions. Public reaction has equally been mixed, too. Some see the testament as a confirmation of their faith, others view it as a challenge. The media is all over it, with headlines talking about a potential religious revolution sparked by Caiaphas' revelations. As news of the testament spread, it didn't take long for the public and media to catch wind of the story. Social media platforms lit up with debates, theories, and reactions from people all over the world. Some saw the testament as a fascinating historical artifact, while others viewed it through a more spiritual or conspiratorial lens. Media outlets were quick to capitalize on the story, with headlines ranging from sensational to scholarly. And then there was Caiaphas. Caiaphas was a religious leader, He was the high priest, and he was filled with pride and coldness. He was crafty and shrewd, and the cross condemned him. Documentaries and news segments delved into the discovery, often featuring interviews with experts who provided various interpretations of Caiaphas' words. The media frenzy brought the story to a global audience, sparking interest and debate among people who might not usually engage with historical or theological topics. For many, the Testament became a symbol of the ongoing quest for truth. It reminded us that history is full of surprises and that our understanding of the past is always evolving. This sense of discovery and the potential for new knowledge captivated the public's imagination. If Caiaphas' last testament is true, it would represent one of the most significant archaeological discoveries of our time. It could change everything we know about Jesus' judgment and crucifixion, offering new insights into the mind of the man at the center of it all. Within academic circles, Caiaphas' testament has sparked intense debate. Historians and archaeologists have scrutinized the document, debating its authenticity, origin, and implications. While the majority of experts agree that the testament is a genuine artifact from the 1st century CE, there is still significant disagreement about how to interpret its contents. Some scholars argue that Caiaphas' visions should be understood as metaphorical or psychological rather than literal. They suggest that the high priest, grappling with his conscience, might have experienced these visions as manifestations of his guilt and fear. This interpretation frames the Testament as a deeply personal document, revealing the inner battles of a man who played a major role in a world-changing event. Others take a more literal approach, viewing the visions as actual prophetic experiences. This perspective aligns more closely with religious interpretations and suggests that Caiaphas was, in some way, privy to a greater cosmic plan. This camp often draws parallels with other historical figures who claim to have had divine or prophetic experiences. For many believers, Caiaphas' testament has reinforced their faith, providing what they see as tangible evidence of divine intervention in human history. It has prompted renewed interest in biblical studies and led some to explore the historical context of their faith more deeply. Churches and religious institutions have also engaged with the Testament, incorporating discussions of its implications into sermons and study groups. On the flip side, the Testament has also sparked critical reflections among skeptics and non-believers. For some, the document serves as a reminder of the complexities and contradictions inherent in religious texts and historical records. It has encouraged a more critical examination of the sources of religious belief and how historical narratives are constructed. Now that we've dug into different and fascinating reactions to Caiaphas' testament, we must let you know that there's an even more interesting discovery ahead. The story takes another interesting turn when archaeologists unearth a limestone ossuary in Jerusalem of Joseph Caiaphas himself. Not only do we have written records that shed light on his thoughts and actions, but we have also uncovered physical evidence that brings us closer to this crucial figure. We are about to explore the remarkable archaeological findings of Caiaphas' tomb and what it discloses about the man who played such an important role in one of history's most famous trials and events, the archaeological discoveries of Caiaphas. Other archaeological discoveries occurred during the 1990s when some workers were digging around the Peace Forest area near Jerusalem, working on a road expansion project. Suddenly, they stumbled upon an ancient burial cave, and they quickly called in the experts from the Israel Antiquities Authority. When the archaeologists arrived, they found something incredible. 12 ossuaries, also called the bone boxes, from the 1st century CE. Among them, one stood out with an ornate design and an inscription that got everyone excited: Yehoseph bar Kapha, Joseph son of Caiaphas. This made the find even more exciting because it connects directly to the high priest, Caiaphas. During the Second Temple period, Jewish burial customs involved placing the deceased in a tomb until the flesh decayed, then collecting the bones and putting them in a limestone box called an ossuary. This practice was especially common among the Jewish elite, who believed in bodily resurrection. The Caiaphas ossuary is particularly fancy, with intricate floral and geometric designs, suggesting it belonged to someone very important. The ossuary itself is a limestone box, about 37 centimeters high, 75 centimeters long, and 25 centimeters wide. The inscriptions are in Aramaic, which was the everyday language of the time. The decorations match other high-status burials from the era. Other ossuaries in the same cave had names that might be related to Caiaphas' family, adding more weight to the identification. Finding the Caiaphas ossuary is a big deal for both biblical archaeology and history. It is a physical piece of evidence that supports the existence of Caiaphas, a figure mentioned in the New Testament and by the Jewish historian Flavius Josephus. This helps bridge the gap between ancient texts and modern archaeology, giving us a clearer picture of the historical context. Of course, not everyone is convinced. Some scholars argue that Caiaphas might have been a more common name than we think, so the ossuary might not necessarily belong to the famous high priest. Others point out that there aren't additional inscriptions explicitly linking this ossuary to the high priest's office. Still, the combination of the name, the fancy design, and the archaeological context makes a pretty strong case. The Caiaphas ossuary is part of a larger collection of finds from the Second Temple period, which includes things like the Dead Sea Scrolls and artifacts from the Temple Mount. These discoveries together give us a richer understanding of Jewish life, religious practices, and the political scene under Roman rule. For Christians, this ossuary provides a tangible connection to the events of the Passion, grounding the gospel stories in real history. After its discovery, the ossuary was carefully documented and preserved by the IAA. It has been displayed in various museums, including the Israel Museum in Jerusalem. This lets both scholars and the public get up close to this remarkable piece of history, sparking further interest and study. The ossuary of Caiaphas is a fascinating find that brings us closer to understanding the world of first-century Judea. It connects the dots between ancient texts and physical evidence, offering insights into the lives and practices of the people of that time. Through ongoing research and preservation, this discovery continues to illuminate a crucial period in Jewish and Christian history, showing just how interconnected our past and present are. Do you think that Caiaphas was actually putting things in order, or was he just synced in his world of protecting his authoritative role? Share your thoughts in the comment section. Don't forget to like, follow, share, and subscribe for more. Also, click on the next video on your screen. You will enjoy it.